So, Nina, the question that I have for you is, are there, and I'm going to use the word still because I know historically there have been, are there still more challenges for a female screenwriter versus a male screenwriter? And if so, what do you think some of those challenges are? And I think we'll talk a bit about what we could maybe do as individuals and as an industry to overcome those challenges. But I'm over explaining the question as I have a tendency to do. So over to you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I am of the belief that unfortunately women do tend to have more challenges when it comes to screenwriting. But I also want to make it clear that, I do understand that screenwriters in general are going to have many, many challenges, whether we be male or female. But I'm going to focus on the challenges that women might face, and I also want to make it clear that I haven't necessarily faced these exact challenges, but because I'm a woman in film, I have to make sure that I know about these challenges so that I can potentially overcome them. Um, a big a big issue in screenwriting and just in general entertainment is going to be sexism.
Mm.
Uh, I think we all generally know about that. But I was looking into it just to see if I could get some numbers. And in the WGAW's 2021 screen survey, uh, about 79% of women said that they experienced discrimination, bullying, and harassment due to their gender. Uh,
79%.
yeah. And unfortunately, I'm not super shocked at that number because even though I haven't reached the height in screenwriting yet where I have experienced that, I have experienced it in the stand-up field and in the book writing field because I wrote a book called Tangerine Vagina. Uh, the title the
Okay.
title is quite snappy.
And you haven't come up against sexism with a title like that. Shocking.
That crazy? No, unfortunately, unfortunately, I have come up with a bit of sexism due to having written a book with the word vagina in it. There is basically the book it's a compilation of short stories. All of them are very funny, in my opinion. But a fair amount of them have to do with experience, like going through and experiencing like coming of age and sex and stuff to do with growing up.
Mm.
Um, and unfortunately, deal especially online, you bump up with a lot of people that are like, ugh, women talking about sex. Gross. Of course they're talking about, this is all women talk about.
Right. Uh,
When
that's not true. That's not, there's also shopping.
exactly, there's also shopping and getting our nails done and pink and dresses, etc.
I'm
Um,
I'm curious, has anyone written the rebuttal book yet? Something like Purple Penis. Has that happened?
Still waiting for it. I might have to do it myself.
I was gonna
You know,
say I can do that. I can.
you should. What are you waiting for, John? Jeez. Um, for real. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, and like here's the thing, I try not to humor people who comment sexist things because at this point I'm just like, this is ingrained in some of our culture, especially internet culture. And I don't know if I'm gonna be the one that changes their mind with tangerine vagina. But I'm hoping eventually we can all kind of work together to um, maybe shift that perspective. And in doing that, I think what's important, which is another thing that female screenwriters struggle with, is the lack of representation
Hmm.
in film and television. So like, I mean, we all know generally the population is kind of split 50-50. I did look it up and women make up 50.8% of the population.
So you do have the majority.
There's just a little bit of the majority,
Yeah.
but we only make up 29.6% of screenwriters.
Hmm.
And that's pretty far from 50. That's like
Yeah.
a
I'm not an accountant. I'm not great with numbers, but that seems a bit off.
right, just a tad.
Yeah.
And then here's the thing, based on like 2010 numbers versus 2020 numbers, it has gone up. Like we are gaining more representation, which is fantastic. But we're not quite at the point of equality yet. And I mean, that's just women in general, because women of color only make up 9.6% of screenwriters, which is wildly low based on, representation. And so, not only do women have a bit of a far way to go, so do women of color. And I think, white women really need to get behind, lifting up more BIPOC voices.
Yeah. I love that as a way to maybe transition into what are some of the things that we can do. I think anybody listening to this wants this to happen. They want more women in Hollywood. They want more female screenwriters. My opinion is that female screenwriters often tell more in-depth, more emotionally complex stories because they have that emotional capacity. So, how do we do this? What are some steps? No one as an individual can change this.
Mhm.
But what are the things that individuals can do so that collectively we start to make a difference?
Yeah, of course. I think, besides all of the big sweeping things that the industry and like these large companies can do, I think us just as individual people and screenwriters and, people in film, I think that we need to make sure that when we're connecting with each other, because I don't know who's listening to this who lives in LA or doesn't live in LA, but a big aspect of Los Angeles
Probably
is
about 7 people listening to this. But this is, we're very early days in this podcast. So
well, to the
yeah,
millions of people listening.
in the future, millions of people will listen to this.
Exactly. Um, a big thing about the Los Angeles industry is connecting with people and creating kind of a web of people you trust and people you know and people you want to work with. And I think what's really important, which I've started doing, and I know a lot of other people have started doing, is reaching out to some of the connections you already have and talk to them about, oh, you know what, I'm really interested in building a team for, a reading of this script. And I'm thinking about potentially shooting it, and I want to know, are there any female directors that you know and trust and love? Is there anyone in the community who, is a female writer who needs like a staff writing job? And kind of reaching out because obviously people are going to work with people who come at the recommendation of somebody that they trust and someone that they know. And so I think it's really important to put your friends out there who are women, who are LGBTQ, who are BIPOC. That's you can really help by lifting them up and putting them up for jobs or positions that other people are, reaching out to you for, especially if you're not available, especially if you're a woman who's not available, but you know another woman who might be available. Uh,
Mm. Hmm.
and I think it just has a lot to do with making those connections and actually searching for those connections.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot more about this when I'm going to answer the question that you posed to me because some of that answer is going to focus on networking. So, spoiler for people wondering what my answer was going to be. I want to circle back to some of the things that you've said. So, you as an individual have written this book. You're also doing stand up. What are some of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis? Or maybe not day-to-day, but what do you try and keep in mind as a perspective or maybe as a vision? Like, where are we trying to get to with this thing? Whether that's the percentages or whether it's the pay gap. what's the mindset that you go about this? Are you hopeful, I guess is what I'm asking. Is this something that is a forever problem, or do you think we can reach that kind of equality within this industry? Hey folks, if you're enjoying this conversation with Nina, sorry to interrupt by the way, go ahead and like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. You'll get much more content like this over the coming weeks aimed at helping you to realize your career as a screenwriter. Thank you.
I really don't think this is a forever problem, especially based on the growth that we've had in the past like 10 years. I think in another 10 years, there's there has to be some more amazing growth. Um, and so, I'm not necessarily in a position of power to, change the hiring process or hire more female writers, but I am in a position to um, make sure that there is transparency in the industry. So I'm always trying to make sure that I'm not keeping secrets from like fellow female writers or any writers in general.
Mm.
Because unfortunately, I think there tends to still be kind of a like a what's the word? Like a culture where you're not really supposed to talk about your pay or what you're making. Um,
Right.
yeah, it's for some reason, it's that's illegal in a lot of other industries. You can't not talk about what you're making. But unfortunately, it seems to still kind of be a thing in the film industry
That's
here and
interesting.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
wonder I wonder why that is. I wonder if that's an artifact of something.
well, it could be kind of wanting to be able to maintain what you have because this industry is so you're kind of like searching from job to job, you're living from job to job. And so you don't want to do something that potentially upsets someone in a position of power. And if they're kind of inferring that, you're getting a sweet deal, we're paying you a fair amount more than some of your coworkers to do this, you don't want to jeopardize that. But unfortunately, that does make it a lot easier for them to kind of not pay other people equal amounts, especially women and people of color. And that might not even be on purpose necessarily. It might just be due to our innate gender bias.
Mhm. I think that's a big part of it. I think when you have, and I don't know the numbers, but a percentage of the decision makers are going to be probably white males.
Mhm.
It's a natural tendency for them to side with people who look and sound like they do. In fact,
Exactly.
I recently learned something that was equal parts shocking, and then when I thought about it, not shocking. I learned that we are more likely to distrust people who have a different accent over a different skin color. And
Really?
I thought that was weird, and then I thought, actually, no, because if I met anybody, any skin color, but they had a British accent, I would immediately feel like, oh, we can connect. This is fine, right?
That's fair. That's so funny. When I meet someone with a British accent, I'm like, I want to be their best friend. This person is so cool.
Let's make it happen. Let's be best friends.
Let's do it. It's official now to your millions of listeners.
My 7 listeners, Nina and I are now best friends. Please go and buy Tangerine Vagina. That's the takeaway from this.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, but that's so yeah, decision makers, white men, and favoring people who look and sound like they do. This has
Mm.
been a problem for many years across all industry, right? Not just
Yeah,
Hollywood.
because I'm not just talking about, screenwriting and film, but I was, working a gig at a well-known comedy club. There we go. I was working a gig at a well-known comedy club, and they had two shows. One was a bit earlier, one was a bit later. And both of their hosts were getting paid. And it, obviously not a lot because comedy isn't necessarily a moneymaker. But they were both doing the same amount of time for their set, and the shows were the same length. and one was a male host and the other was a female host. And the female host had mentioned something about the rate of pay, and the male host was like, "Oh, I made more than that." And they noticed that she got paid $20 less than what he got paid.
Which is a big gap when the total was 40.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's
But there was
50%.
no reason for the pay difference.
Right. Right. They're doing the exact same job,
Mhm.
exact same location, same hours.
Exactly.
What feasible reason could there be for that gap? That's the part that I still scratch my head over that.
And tickets sold were approximately the same as well. So there was no discretion in, audience size. And so they haven't raised it to the club yet because she would be afraid of not being able to book another gig there.
You're in that position where you either continue to get that paycheck knowing that it's less, or you risk not receiving any paycheck because they don't want to work with you anymore. I think that scenario that you've just painted, I think does a good job of kind of encapsulating the entire problem.
Exactly, because you want the opportunity, even if it's less, because then the other option is no opportunity at all, which is
Yeah.
upsetting.
And you're probably also thinking, okay, it's a lower paycheck for now, but it's a foot in the door and I can build up from this and
Mhm.
eventually be treated fairly. What a great goal to have.
One would love, one would love.
The audacity of such a goal. To one day be treated fairly.
How dare they? Women want they want equality, they want equal pay. This is ridiculous.
It's all you ever hear about these days.
God, always nagging us about money
Right.
and like no sexism. What is this?
They need to read your book. Yeah. I'm going to keep promoting your book because just purely based on the title. I actually don't know what it's. I haven't read a single page of it. Full disclosure to my seven
Good.
listeners. I haven't read it, but I fully endorse it based on Nina and the title of the book.
Thank you.
Yeah. How are we feeling? Do we feel like we've covered some ground here? Because I know we do want to reverse the flow and have you ask me a question about screenwriting. So, do you feel like we've covered some things? Is there anything that we're not saying about challenges faced by female screenwriters and what we can do to take some positive steps?
Let's see. I think we've basically, oh, one thing I did want to bring up as well, because this can also sometimes get a little confusing for when talking about this subject. Obviously women want to be represented. Obviously, we need to do our part to stop sexism. But another issue that can kind of sometimes come around in trying to do this is tokenism. And so, you want to make sure that you're representing women in your, staff writing room and also like on the stage and in film, but you also don't want to tokenize them.
Can we clarify? I have never heard the word tokenize. So,
Mhm.
I'm guessing from context, it's having that token female writer because you know you should, rather than doing
Yes,
it because she's the best for the job.
right, exactly. Also, one of a good way I can put it, a really simple way, is when booking a comedy show. I was recently around a booker that was booking a show. I wasn't on the show, but I was overhearing him booking it. And another comic had reached out asking if they could be on the show. And they said, "Oh, we already have a butch lesbian on the show." So, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's not how that works." I've never ever heard them say, actually, we have enough men on this comedy show. Never heard anyone say that. But
I don't think anyone's ever said those words.
yeah.
I don't.
There's no like, oh, we
Maybe,
already have a guy who enjoys sports and drinks beer after work. We can't. That's
yeah,
enough.
the only time those words have ever been spoken is at a bachelorette party when they already have a stripper, a male stripper. We already have enough guys.
Oh yeah, but you want to make sure that in, giving and getting that representation, you're, looking at it with a broader lens than not just like, we have our woman and we are good.
Tick box.
Right. Yeah, we're not ticking boxes. We're
Mhm.
trying to lift people up and see, we're trying to like see women as people, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I heard, I mean, yes, definitely. Plus one to that, double click, see women as people. I think that's kind of bare bones. Like that's kind of entry level stuff. Um, I heard a guy say this at a conference I attended recently. Nothing to do with the entertainment industry. It was a conference, but it doesn't matter. The details are not important. But he was a man who was, I don't want to speak to his race because I don't know for sure, but he was a man of color. And he was on stage doing this talk about diversity and inclusivity. And he said, when I'm in a room, I don't want to be in a room because they needed to sprinkle a little diversity in that room. I want to be in a room because that room is not complete without me. And
Yeah.
I was just that just hit me like, yes, that's the thing that we all need to bear in mind because that's how everybody wants to feel in that room. We're all here because we need to be here based on merit. We're not being tokenized.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah, I loved that quote. It really stuck with me.
Yeah, that's a good quote.
Forget the guy's name entirely, but that quote was wonderful.
Don't remember him, but that was so cool.
Don't remember a thing about him. Maybe it was a white guy. I don't know.
Who knows? He skis. It's diversity. It's
Something
fine.
like that. Yeah. Okay, so I think we've covered some great ground there, and I think we did a few practical takeaways. I think just supporting female writers whenever we come across them, offering opportunities when we can, not keeping secrets from them, being as transparent as possible is something else that I picked up on, which I love because the industry has many, many secrets.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we did some good work here. I'm proud of us. Hey folks, thanks very much for watching part one of my conversation with the great Nina Dicker. We decided that we'd separate it out because part two, we went in a very different direction. We talked all about networking, how to do it the right way for the right reasons. So go ahead and click on part two. It should be on your screens right now. Go ahead, click through, give it a watch. You will learn a ton about the importance of networking and how to do it. Go ahead.